everybody, Mike from Profiling Evil, and I'm on here with Frank Grosbeach, a retired Royal Canadian Mounted Police officer, and through a very close friend of ours, a former colonel in the New Jersey State Police, we came together to talk a little bit about the murder that happened with Brian Thompson in New York City, but most importantly, with the arrest today of Luigi Mangione, a 26-year-old Ivy League graduate who is now being looked at as the alleged killer in the murder of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson. This is a case, Frank, that has captivated both the public and law enforcement community. But there are some really amazing new developments that came with this arrest. And I really appreciate you taking time to just kind of chat about these a little bit based on your expertise. So as we get started, maybe you could tell everybody what your law enforcement background is, but now your scientific expertise as it becomes more important to today's discussion in ghost guns.
Okay, so thank you for the opportunity. I really do, and we finally meet today. So let me take it back a little bit. So 18 years Special Service Force, RCM with the Canadian Armed Forces, then subsequently into the RCMP. And from there, I was tapped on the shoulder and said, Frank, would you come on to the RCMP National Weapons Enforcement Support Team, which is the Canadian version of the ATF. The memorandums of understanding and the partnership between the ATF and the RCMP NWES program have been quite well established over the years. And I got drawn into the PMF world, the privately made firearms, actually very early in the 2000s. But my kickoff in this dealt with CNC fabricated 1911s, Scorpions, AR pattern rifles, and then subsequently also the conversion of top vented blank firing guns, principally out of Turkey, the ECOLs and firearms of that nature. And I wanted to do something about it because we were having homicide after homicide. I had 3 back-to-back homicides with 1911 semi-automatic CNC fabricated PMFs. Or people refer to, I prefer to call them, I'm not a fan of calling them ghost guns. Personally, I prefer calling them privately made firearms using modern technology methods, CNC fabrication, 3D printing, the conversions, things of that nature. So that's how I like to refer to it.
So can I ask you a question about that, sure, Frank? So I've always referred to it as a ghost gun, but today is educational for me. And I assumed always that it was because of the lack of serial numbers and the lack of federal oversight. What's the difference, and really how do we change that term from ghost gun to privately manufactured firearm?
Well, the ATF used the term PMF, privately made firearm. It's within the community itself, the 3D print, the fabrication, self-fabrication community, and I'm not just talking about within the United States. We're talking within the world because we're dealing with these firearms globally. And so, yes, because there's no make, model, caliber, serial number markings on the firearm, importation stamps, any of that, they're being referred to commonly as ghost guns because you can't do a tracing history on those firearms because you don't know where they came from unless you actually have the person in hand at the fabrication site, things of that nature, or during the due course of an investigation that you're able to put that item back to where it came from, i.e. because of tool marks, unique markings, unique fabrication methodology, things of that nature. So that's where the PMF, the ghost gun came from. I mean, there was one company that used it and then it was adapted. And now, of course, media, all sorts of media, newspapers, television, everything else is referring to it as ghost guns, even to the point where I watched the movie last night where they referred to it as ghost gun. So it's become the common phrase that everybody will refer to. but again, I refer to it as privately made firearms using modern technology methods, 3D printing, the milling, either of polymer or metal, things of that nature, the conversion. That's how I refer to it. Because also I work with the United Nations, helping them with regard to these developments in this self-fabrication world. There is sometimes within agencies calling PMFs craft guns. And craft guns and PMFs, I don't see them as the same thing. Again, PMFs using modern technology, and then craft artisanal, where we're talking about slam fires, the pipe guns, things of that nature. I mean, where we're seeing, I know of the 12 gauge made from a bicycle pump, a 22 from a stapler, all these things, those are craft artisanal. And that's how I refer to them. So I make sure there's a clear divide when I give my descriptors.
Well, let me ask you something. I'm putting up a photo of this suspect who's been arrested today, Luigi Mangione, and Luigi Mangione. This kid, in the little bit of information that we've been able to kind of figure out thus far, is a Maryland native, arrested now in Altoona, Pennsylvania, but he was a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania, but apparently has been jetting all around the globe as he's been working his life, whatever his life is, I guess. And he was born in Maryland. He was like this valedictorian at a really prestigious school, had an impressive academic record. He went on to Penn. He earned a bachelor's and a master's. He's got computer science degree, engineering degree, graduates cum laude. And he's not only academically accomplished, but he's deeply involved in tech innovation. So that's kind of where I wanted to drift for a moment here as we talk, because the idea of building a gun myself and then walking out and being the first one to pull the trigger on it scares the wits out of me. Tell me a little bit about this personally made firearm process, and then talk about the weapon that you observed on the news video of the actual shooting scene, and maybe some of the personality of someone that could have done what this alleged suspect did when he shot and killed Thompson, because he looks pretty dang proficient with a firearm as he's moving through that crime scene.
Okay, so let's first off, so if it is, okay, we don't know for sure yet, is it 3D printed or is it a polymer 80 hybrid kit? We don't know that yet. We won't know until the investigative agency makes their media, releases the information. So if we were to say, okay, the polymer 80 kits, yes, we know not that long ago, polymer 80 went out of, stopped producing the kits because of the pressure from the US government and law enforcement, but there are other companies that do make the kits as well. And it is just a simple process because I've done it. I've made them. I've made the polymer 80 kits, the hybrid guns. And you are provided with the frame, you are provided with the jig, you're provided with the drills and the simple instructions: drill here, drill here, drill here, drill here. Then
okay, but let me ask you something.
Yeah.
How did you feel when you pulled the trigger for the first time out on the range after you built it?
I was confident. I knew exactly what I had in my hands.
Wow. Okay.
And because it comes down to also, I trained as an armorer with Glock. I trained as an armorer with Colt, and familiarity with firearms over all the years. You know, even where I don't know if you recall, there was actually resin kits around for a while for making the ARs. And we made the resin AR kits, but we made them in a zero vacuum hood so that we didn't have failures of the frame. So things of that nature is knowing what you're doing, knowing how you're doing it, properly assembling the firearm. No different than when you're doing the 3D printing. You've got using the proper materials, you're using the settings are all proper. You do the full inspections. You make sure that when you're putting in your rails, all the components, everything fits properly. Then to the point that the action with the slide moves properly. Your trigger is properly resetting. The magazine feed is proper. The magazine seat's proper. You're doing the test firing with snap caps before you're doing the live rounds. There's a method to the process, especially for those of us who are professionals. Now, when we look at to the incident that took place, in my job, I was tasked with certain specific files that involved a significant number of homicides that had actually been captured on video. And surprisingly, for a lot of people don't know, a number of homicides that have taken place between gangsters here in British Columbia, especially in the Lower Mainland, Vancouver, Surrey, Burnaby, Richmond, these areas, have been with handguns fitted with suppressors. CNC fabricated, principally CNC fabricated suppressors. And I have fired ARs, handguns fitted with suppressors that were CNC fabricated, 3D printed, the oil can, the oil filters, and I've never had failures. I've never had a jam, but then again, I knew what I was handling because I understood internal, external, terminal ballistics. I understood the mechanics. I mean, when I look on Foscat or Reddit and I'm watching guys shoot guns and they're firing these PMFs that they've created, and I'm seeing poor poor trigger placement, firearms control. I know these guys don't know in hell what they're doing. Now, with regard, I watched the video a couple of times that took place with the killing of the CEO. May he rest in peace, and for his family, just find peace. Obviously had a jam, but then again, we look at the jam. We can't say what created the malfunction of the firearm. Only the forensic lab that is examining the firearm. So I'm not even going to make a presumption. Only the firearms lab that is doing the physical functionality testing of that firearm will be able to say why it did what it did. But also, I'm seeing, well, he realized he had a jam. He's clearing it because he re-engaged. So he may very well have already known that he would have some issues with that firearm, but he was prepared to deal with it. I didn't see him panic. I didn't see him twitch. I saw him do the clearing and then re-engage. So, I mean, he was, to me, demonstrated as other individuals I've watched commit killings, engaged and direct in what he wanted to do. He had a plan and he followed through on it. Now it comes down to the forensic lab to do their work with regard to the functionality of the firearm, any issues with the firearm, because the questions are going to be asked. Why did it jam? Why did it have the malfunction, a mechanical cycling malfunction? They'll be able to answer that as they do the examinations, because they'll want to match the ammunition. They're going to use the magazine that was seized with the firearm. They're going to go through all those mechanical processes in the due course of their examination. So I'm not going to make any presumptions. That is for them. And when it subsequently goes to court to explain why things you may have had a malfunction of some type or a mechanical interruption, and let them deal with that.
Yeah. So as people are watching in the true crime community, I'm kind of frustrated because I'm hearing everybody talk about the silencer and the weapon, and I guess the question I've got is it possible that he built both, or that he fit a silencer obtained some other way to a weapon that he manufactured on his? What are some of the options there?
So yeah, it could be. Did he fabricate? I mean, if you on Reddit, Foscad, there's multiple designs for suppressors, Shush Puppy, and all kinds of other uh, types of suppressors out there. And then, of course, you have the various oil cans, things of that nature. We won't, because we're looking at a dark vault, we don't have the specifics. So again, it'll come down to the forensics lab and investigators determining what it is. And this will come down to, he obviously he's a smart lad. He has the mechanical engineering, the computer engineering, that background. So to fabricate is not an issue. So it comes down to, obviously the investigators are going to write a search warrant, and they're going to go into his residence, wherever he lived. And they are going to see for other evidence. Did he print the components? And if he did print the components, then the police have to ensure that they get the preservation production orders for the warrant purpose, to get into the computer and find out, okay, what kind of where are the programs on the computer for the printer, if there is one there, and what kind of CAD programs, what kind of the STL program, the slicer, which would take the STL, and then you, depending on the type of printer that you have, the slicer will create the parameters for the printing process. So the time, the heat, the table settings, all that, the layering process, all of those nuances for 3D printing. And then you would take that and then you would put it onto either a direct connection from the laptop or on an SD card. And you take that SD card and you put it into the printer, find the program, and you make sure you have the right polymer material, that your table is level, you have everything set in place, and quite literally it's hit play and starts the printing process. And depending on the printer, it can go from 12 to 14 hours to half that, depending on higher end printing machines. So it really and so the police have to be able to find, if there is a printer, get that information. Then they also have to look at, okay, if he was aftermarket components, is there any documentation where he bought the materials from? And we've got that, so they have to look for the invoices, things of that nature. Then also in the trash to consider, okay, did he print it? Then the support materials, the support for the lower receiver, if he printed it, to get that out of the garbage, because that also is evidence. Then we look at, where did he get the ammunition? So you have to look at all these parameters, and then was he communicating with anybody else online? Yeah, there's all these steps that have to take place to be able to put it all together. It's not like the days where I'd seize a Glock, I'd have, even if they obliterated the serial number, recover the serial number, or if it was a new generation, taking the hidden serial number and running a trace. So then with the trace, I could find out who the last known purchaser was and then do the magic. In this case, we don't have that. And then, of course, the forensics, we find out, maybe he went to a range or a back 40 where he went to test fire all these items, and police discover where that is. Then, of course, now you have to do the forensic, gather casings and see if there are matches. So there's all these steps that have to take place as an investigator, that because this is quite a unique investigation, we have what appears to be some serious planning that took place.
Yeah.
So this didn't happen overnight to put this together. There was a thought process and a plan and an execution, no pun intended.
Yeah. Let me share something that I found kind of interesting as I've looked at this guy, because despite his professional successes, investigators uncovered this darker side to this guy, and his online presence, I think, reveals a pretty interesting fascination with anti-establishment ideologies. He followed Ted Kaczynski, the famous Unabomber, and Kaczynski's writings, and I studied Kaczynski just so much. The thing that I think is interesting is that many of his sentiments are kind of mirroring even a Kaczynski, and I think they've indicated that they've recovered during the arrest a handwritten document that had all kinds of anti-corporate rhetoric, phrases like "these parasites had it coming." All of this kind of stuff further solidifies this connection here between his beliefs and the crime. And you talked about the amount of planning that went on. I mean, this guy spent a massive amount of time planning for this thing, even going into town, and I suspect rehearsing his route over and again. But I find it interesting. At first, people wanted to say this was a professional hit, and from the beginning, I said it wasn't a professional hit. It had nothing that mirrored professional hits that we've witnessed in our careers, but his proficiency was interesting.
Yes.
And I suspect with a gaming background, a technology background, this wasn't the first weapon that he's built, but maybe it was. Why would he go in to this with a weapon that malfunctions? Or is that part of the reason why he was so good at clearing the weapon when things didn't go right?
And it again, it's a presumption, because we don't know if he kept a diary where he kept information, things of that nature. But from what I saw was he dealt with the mechanical issue. It's no different than, like if I had an issue, a misfit, tap, rack, and go. He did that. And
it reminded me of the cops we trained with. I mean, what you did at the range every single day.
Exactly. So, did he, tap, rack, reassess, and go in, and sometimes it comes down, drop the mag, reseat the mag, tap, thump, rack, and off you go. He did that. So it's not like he didn't practice it. It's not like, from what I could see, it's not like he didn't know this couldn't happen.
Yeah.
And
so what's the next marker, in your opinion, of information that will come out publicly that we need to watch for? A better description on the weapon, more about the ideology that he had, his manifestos and other kinds of things. Any other thoughts?
No, it'll come down to that. It'll come. And then also his associations. Was he on various of the online platforms? Did he communicate to find out, which would be the best design? If he indeed printed, is to find out, did he make any inquiries to find out what would be the best frame to use, things of that nature, the assembly process. Those are the things, again, it's all the investigators, if they, and most likely will do, because of the circumstances and the high profile of this, will do a very intensive, thorough investigation to dot all the I's, cross all the T's. And even if the information that is in front of you appears trivial, it can always take you down a path. And it's knowing, and the other big factor is knowing what you're looking at. So if the investigators aren't quite sure, is to reach out to some of their resources that can tell them, this is what you need to do. This is where you need to look. This is how you need to extract that information. And so you also, if he did have a printer, he did have the computer, you also have the forensic experts that are IT trained to be able to extract that information, and the analysts to take all the nuances that even a very skilled investigator may not see right off the bat, but the analyst can look at all the various little nuances and put something together by using facts and evidence that may seem so far out there, but if you put all the pieces of the puzzle together, a picture comes to light.
I really appreciate that. It makes me think of something that I always say on Profiling Evil is I always quote Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who penned Sherlock Holmes, and that wonderful phrase, it is a capital mistake to theorize before you have all the facts.
Exactly.
Because insensibly, you will end up twisting facts to meet your theory rather than letting the facts unfold the truth.
And let's, no different than me going on a stand as an expert and being asked. And, I always tell the prosecutor, be careful the question you ask, because you may open Pandora's box. And I'm not here to answer your question. Your question is for the court. And my job is to answer to the court, not to you. And I will give you what I know based on fact. And the opinion has to be based on evidence that is before the court and before what I was provided with. And we always have to remember, there can always be an alternative rationale for something. And until we have it laid out in front of us, where the person the accused is clearly stated or displayed what the intent was, why and how, everything's a presumption until the evidence proves otherwise.
I agree. We're going to come back together. I hope, in fact, this weekend I'm going to be in New York City, and I think the Colonel and I are going to probably jump in a car and retrace this predator's steps through the city and record a few things. And maybe that one of those evenings we can get together, the three of us, and chat a little more, because I suspect we'll have a whole lot more information coming out. And I want to know if I have permission to still put on the thumbnail for this video something about ghost guns, because that's what people are going to remember. But then we have the clarification in here. I want your permission.
Of course. Please do. And when you meet up with the Colonel, please say hi for me. It's been a lot of years since I've actually been truly face-to-face with him. And hopefully that I'll get that opportunity again.
The killing of Brian Thompson and the subsequent arrest of this Luigi Mangione have revealed this kind of really complex web of personal grievances, these ideological extremisms, and frankly, systematic vulnerabilities like these personally made manufactured weapons. So as investigators go about uncovering the full story in this case, I think it'll serve as kind of a stark reminder of the potential consequences of these unaddressed, radicalized people and the need for more comprehensive solutions to emerging threats like these personally manufactured firearms. I think the coming days, weeks, months are going to be critical in determining the extent of Mangione's culpability, whether there are other people involved, the broader lessons, and maybe help redirect a discussion around this personally manufactured firearm issue, which this, even saying that, is going to upset a lot of people, and I'm sure I'll hear back from that. But what are your thoughts as we kind of wrap things up?
So, I mean, if we look back, the 3D printed firearm that really kicked the door down was the FGC 9. And excuse the language, but and was created by an individual in Germany who had, again, anti-establishment, anti-this, anti-that, I'm oppressed thought process. And we see that on a regular basis. That's not unusual. And these people aren't stupid. And they, we have educated folks who have a mindset and a thought process. And these are the ones that where their rationale and their moral contract to society doesn't play anymore. And they are willing to take steps, as we've seen, in the use of firearms in period, whether self-fabricated or industry fabricated, to met out what they feel is their punishment upon society or parts of society. And the self-fabricated world, the PMF world, or the ghost gun world, if we want to call it, adds that layer of anonymity that they feel, well, it can't be traced back to me. And if I get away with this, there's nothing to track unless that gun is recovered is subsequently down the line, and forensics are able to do casing, the matches from the internal components. But yeah, it's going to be interesting because we've already seen this. This is not the first time we've had an individual with an anti-societal thought process and decided to carry out an act of violence against those around him that they felt caused harm to them.
Yeah.
And we have to be aware of that. And again, it's a society issue. We have to be aware of mental health, all these different things that we have to look at. And sometimes, we wish there were more services out there for the folks that are dealing with issues. And again, we have to remember, it's not just the people that are living on the streets that are, from day to day trying to survive. We're dealing with individuals such as this young man who, intelligent, has everything available to him, still felt like he was slighted. So and dollars to donuts, there were markers before he did this. And the question is, were they seen, or were they missed, or were they seen and ignored?
Well, I really appreciate all this information, Frank. I appreciate not only your service and your career and your dedication to continuing to share this kind of information to the law enforcement community globally, but to also kind of step away and share it with the true crime community. There are some amazing people out there. And I kind of chuckled this morning when Mayor Adams from New York City announced it was good old-fashioned police work that brought this guy into custody. No, it wasn't. It was maybe good old-fashioned police work that put a photograph of him out there, but it was a McDonald's worker that brought this thing to fruition. And that is the power of knowing when it's appropriate to share information with the media or with the true crime community or social platforms. And that's something I guess we need to continue to tweak and get better at in law enforcement, is to figure out how to live in this now digital, social media driven world and release information in a way that can lead to things just like this.
And that's exactly it is. Use the resources that are around you. And also remember, even if there's people out there that you don't particularly are not a fan of and you don't like, listen to them, because they're going to share something with you that was insightful, knowledgeable, and because of their life skills, the life adventures that they have, they will have seen things in a different way than you have. And we need to be open, and we need to listen and pay attention to them, because they may very well teach us more than we realize and guide us down that path that we need to go look. So never shrug off somebody that has something to say, because they may very well yell with the loud, with the quietest voice, but with the greatest impact.
I want to thank Frank Grosbeach, and I apologize because I know I've massacred his name a few times, folks. But please watch for Profiling Evil on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. And if you like audio podcasts, make sure you're checking out Profiling Evil's audio podcasts on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget about going over to our website at profilingevil.com. and check out our Unsolved Homicides and Missing Persons map. It's a social experience where you can enter cases from your own community, maybe something that's been out there and not talked about much, but we're doing it as a social experiment where you can share information and dig into those cases and look at them a little deeper. Also, check out our story maps. And by all means, with the holidays coming up, check out Profiling Evil's books. My two favorite on there are Deceived, an investigative memoir of the Zion Society cult. Let's see if I can get my finger in the right place right here. And next to it, She Knew No Fear, the investigation into my great-great-grandmother's murder, who was killed in 1891, and 130 years later, I solved that murder. If you're in the United States, I'll ship it to you for free, and I'll even personalize it as part of your gift giving for this year. But you got to order it through profilingevil.com, or you can get it, like if you're Frank and in Canada, you can get it through Amazon anywhere in the world. Thanks for your support of Profiling Evil, folks. We'll see you soon at the next crime scene.